Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel, and Mirz Hashem today we will be learning Daf Kuf Nun Gimel Amud Aleph. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos. We pick up today on the bottom line of the Shulchan Aruch on Kuf Nun Beis Amud Beis Siman Shin Chaf Beis Siv Vav. Mirz Hashem today we will be concluding Siman Shin Chaf Beis. Our learning should be a schus for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael Hanasunim Batzaru Ba'Shivya Ha'imdim Bein Bayamu Bein Bayabasha Hamakom Yerachem Aleihem V'Yitzia Mitzaro L'Rvacha Me'afela L'Oira Mishiva L'Geula Hashta B'Gala V'Zman Kariv and Emar Amen. Our learning should be a schus refuah shalema for Yeshua Levi ben Ahuva Malka Chana, V'Shemer ben Esther Fradel, Yitzchak ben Tzion ben Dusha, Chavadasa Baserol, Rivka Bashiralea. They should have a refuah shalema b'say Shar Chel Yisrael. In the schus of the limud HaTorah of Klal Yisrael, the Rebbeinu Shalom should watch over every member of Klal Yisrael b'chol makom shehem. Okay, Siman Shin Chaf Beis Siv Vav, says the Mechaber. Very interesting topic we're going to be discussing today. Says the Mechaber, Hamechalek libnei beisai monois b'Shabbos. Somebody is doling out portions to the people around his table, to bnei beisai. So they're sitting around the table by the Shabbos Suda, and it's time to start doling out portions. And, you've got a bunch of bowls of cholent, and it's time to start doling out the cholent. So what this fellow wants to do is, he's going to make a goyrel. Says the Mechaber, Hamachalik libnei beisai monois b'Shabbos, somebody who is doling out portions to the people around his table, to his bnei bayis on Shabbos, Yochel lahatil goyrel. He's allowed to make a lottery. He's allowed to make a raffle. What does that mean? Loimar, in order to say, Lemi sheyetze goyrel pliny, yiyeh chelik pliny shaloi. We're going to make some kind of a raffle, and depending on what you pick, if you get this goyrel, then you're going to get this portion. All right? Who got that goyrel? You got that girl? Okay, you get this portion. Next, okay, you get that portion. However, the caveat over here is that we're not dealing with different size portions. We're not making a raffle to see who gets the biggest portion or who gets the sweetest portion. That's not what we're doing. All the portions are the same. The point over here is who's going to get first. That's what it seems. Says the Mechaber, V'hu sheyu hachalokim shavim. It has to be that the portions are equal. Ve'enei oisa, and the only reason you're making the lottery, you're not making the lottery ela kidei lahashvoisam, only to make everybody equal, shaloi lahatil kina beineim, so that there should not be any kind of jealousy between everyone. If I'm understanding properly, what it sounds like is, the point of this goyrel is that we don't, who's going to get first, who's going to get second, who's going to get third. So we make a goyrel, everybody is the same, and it just goes by the goyrel. Whoever picks that goyrel gets that portion. Whoever picks that goyrel gets that portion. Or maybe even though the portions are the same, maybe we don't want a situation where people are going to be looking over, oh, that one has more meat, that one has more barley, that one has more beans, that one has more potatoes. No, we're just going to make a goyrel and everybody gets according to the goyrel. Okay, says, so the halacha that the Mechaber said over here is, you're sitting around the table with the bnei beisai. Now this is very important because this is we're going to see a contrast to this very soon. The first halacha here in Siv Vav is talking about a person with his bnei beisai, the people of his family, the people around his table. You're allowed to go make this goyrel, you're allowed to go make this lottery and give out the portions according to the goyrel, so long as all of the portions are equal. And the only reason you're doing it is shaloi lahatil kina beineim. Says the Mishnah Berurah, the portions have to be the same. Now, why is it that the portions have to be the same? Explains the Mishnah Berurah, if the portions are the same, then we don't have to worry about gambling. Since nobody is coming out ahead based on the goyrel. What is this talking about? Well, we know that one of the isurim that we come up against in many places in Shas is mesachek bekovia, which literally means somebody who shoots the dice, somebody who plays with dice. What does that mean? Well, playing with dice was a method of gambling. Back in the day of the Mishnah and in the Gemara, they would throw dice, and based on the throw of the dice, people would bet. So two people would bet against each other, and for $100 or $10 or whatever it is, and they would throw dice. And the winner would collect the money. The loser has to pay out the money. Now we know that a Mesachik Bekuvya is Pasal Edus. Somebody who gambles in this way, somebody who gambles, is Pasal Edus. We don't trust his testimony. Why not? Well, we're going to see in the Mishnah Berurah a little bit later. One of the problems with Mesachik Bekuvya is that gamblers generally do not expect to lose. The reason somebody is willing to put $1,000 down on a bet is because somehow he's convinced that he knows how to calculate the odds better than anybody else, and somehow he expects that he's going to win. So then what happens when he loses? When he loses and he has to pay out money, he's not really paying out the money belev sholem. He's not really paying out that money willingly and happily. Really, it's begrudgingly. And since he's doling out the money begrudgingly, this is what we call avak gezel, which literally means the dust of theft. Meaning that since he's not giving the money belev sholem, when the recipient of the money receives the money, that's tainted. It's almost as if he's stealing the money, because the one who's giving the money is not giving it willingly. So you're receiving money that was not given to you willingly, and that is what we call avak gezel. And people who engage in such activities, and where there's avak gezel going around, they're pasal edus. And it's usher. We don't do Mesachik Bekuvya. Mesachik Bekuvya is considered an isser. Now over here, where we're doing a lottery, we're going to see that there's a little bit of an issue here, or at least a hint of an issue of Mesachik Bekuvya, because we're dealing a lottery, which is a raffle. It's kind of like a gamble. I don't know what I'm going to get. You don't know what you're going to get. I hope I'm going to get this. You hope you're going to get that. Now, if the portions would not be equal, so then it's like you threw a raffle, and the winner, you threw a lottery, and the winner got a bigger portion than the loser. That kind of has a similarity to gambling, where the winner is mistaker. The winner gets a profit, and the loser loses. Now, the Mishnah Berurah himself is going to point out later that really in our scenario, there's really no problem here of avak gezel, because what's going on here? The father is the one who's giving out the lottery tickets, and the cholent is all his, and it's not that whoever receives the cholent somehow there's avak gezel in the fact there's no issue here of avak gezel at all. Nobody's gambling against each other to be mistaker over the other one. And it's all coming from the father. It doesn't belong to the B'nai Beisai. They're not gambling against each other. It's all coming from the Balabayas. And the Balabayas is giving it all out belev sholem. So really, there's no problem here of avak gezel. There's really no problem of Mesachik Bekuvya. But it bears a similarity to Mesachik Bekuvya. Now, in our case, over here in Mishnah Berurah is cutting your test. The Mishnah Berurah tells me, what was the halacha of the Mechaber? The halacha of the Mechaber was the Balabayas could do this. He could do this lottery to decide who gets which portion. But said the Mechaber, but all the portions have to be equal. Explains the Mishnah Berurah, why do all the portions have to be equal? Because if the portions would not be equal, that's when it would bear some sort of similarity to Mesachik Bekuvya, because then there's a winner and a loser. The winner gets the bigger portion, the loser gets the smaller portion. Once we're dealing with a winner and a loser, now already it bears a similarity to Mesachik Bekuvya, and now we don't like it. But in the Mechaber scenario, where all of the portions are the same, there is no similarity to Mesachik Bekuvya, because there's no winner and there's no loser. That's what the Mishnah Berurah is explaining in Ois Katan Yutes. Okay. So that was the first halacha of Sivav. The Balabayas could give out this lottery, and they could draw lots to decide who will get which portion. Two caveats. First of all, it has to be B'nai Beisai. It has to be he's doing this with his family members around his table. And all of the portions have to be the same, so that there's no issue of Mesachik Bekuvya. Now continues the Mechaber to the second halacha, second line down near the beginning of the line. Aval im acherim, but to do this with people who are not b'nei beisai, so you're doing this by a kiddush in shul, you're not doing it by b'nei beisai, aser. Now it's going to be aser, but it's going to be aser for a different reason. Why is it aser? Explains the Mechaber. Kevan shemakpidin ze el ze. Because when you're dealing with family members, each family member, hopefully, fagins the other family member. Meaning they're not makbid ze. There's no competition over here that if you get a little bit more than me, I'm going to be makbid on you. So that's not an issue. But by kiddush and shul, you're not dealing with family members. Now people could be makbid against each other. Why did he get a bigger portion than me? Why did he get a bigger portion? Why did he get a smaller portion? So what? What's the problem with that? Explains the Mechaber, Kevan shemakpidim zal zeh, since now they're not family members and they're going to be makbid zal zeh, yavoyu lidei mida umishkal. You know what's going to happen now? Now the people are going to be looking, who got a bigger portion? Who got a smaller portion? I think he got a bigger portion than me. The other guy says, nah, come on, he didn't get a bigger portion. Really? Let me measure it. I'm going to go measure my portion, and I'm going to go grab his portion, and I'm going to measure his portion. Measuring? You're not allowed to measure on Shabbos. Or, I'm going to go weigh it. I think he got a half a pound more than me. Weighing? You're not allowed to weigh things on Shabbos. So, Mid and Mishkal are also on Shabbos. Says the Mechaber, to draw lots when you're not dealing with B'nai Beisai, that you're not allowed to do. Forget about Mesachik B'Kuvya. Even if there's no issue of Mesachik B'Kuvya, even if all of the portions, so to speak, look like they're the same, and you're not really worried about Mesachik B'Kuvya, but there's another issue, and that is that there's going to be this jealousy, the makpid zeh al zeh, and therefore you might come to Mida u'Mishkal. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah, Kevin Shemakpidin. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ulechalik b'li girl. How about to give out portions without a girl when you're not dealing with B'nai Beisai? Why aren't we worried then also? The Shamish and the Shul is going to give out portions by the Kiddush, and maybe people are going to be makpid zal zeh, and they're going to come to the Shamish with tinus. I weighed my portion, and my portion is 2 ounces less than his portion. How come we're not worried about Mida u'Mishkal when there's no lottery? Says the Mishnah Berurah, the Mistama Amrina she'ein makpidin, ela im kein roitzim lahatel goyrel. This idea that everybody is makpid zal zeh, that's not really the default assumption. We don't by default assume that the midos going on around this kiddush are so bad that everybody's looking at everybody else's plate and everybody's mamish be makpid zal zeh. The only time we have that fear is if there was a girl. Once you're making a girl, what does that show me? Why are you making the girl? Obviously, you're making a girl because you're afraid that people are makpid zal zeh. So somebody got up and said, what are we going to do to make sure nobody has tinus? We'll make a girl. So the girl is a siman that they're makpid zal zeh. So when there's a girl, that's an indication that they're makpid zal zeh, then we're worried they might come to Mida u'Mishkal. But if they're not making a girl, then we could assume that they're not makpid zal zeh, and then we're not worried about Mida u'Mishkal. Das chazinon shemakpidin. Va'afilu im hem shchenim v'loy b'nei chabura achas. Even if these people are neighbors, but they're not all part of one clique, the derech stam shchenim lahakbid elu alelu. And unfortunately, we know that when it's just neighbors and they're not all part of the same clique in the same social circle, then very often there is ktata, people are makbid one on the other. Still become makam loyasir rabban lachalik b'li girl. The only issur that the Chazal made over here is when there's a girl, so there's an indication that people are makbid zal zeh, and then we have to worry about coming to Mida u'Mishkal. Eiskal chavalot, they're makbid zal zeh. Hainu shaloi limachal chaveira yafal davar mu'it. Meaning they're so makbid that they're going to be jealous about 2 ounces, and they might come to Mida u'Mishkal. Okay, so we have 2 halachas here so far. To make this kind of lottery with B'nai Beisai, when everything is the same, that you're allowed to do. We're not worried about Mesachik B'Kuvya, because there's no winners, there's no losers. We're not worried that they're going to come to Mida u'Mishkal, because they're B'nai Beisai, and we assume that they fagin each other to the extent that they're not going to come to Mida u'Mishkal to see who has more and who has less. But if you're not dealing with B'nai Beisai, if you're dealing with Acherim, then it's usher, even if the portions are equal, because we're afraid that through jealousy, people are going to come to Midah u'mishkal. Now, the next halacha says the Mechaber, the end of the second line, Avalitein mana gedola keneged mana ketana. But to have different size portions, to have big bowls of cholent and small bowls of cholent, and now you're going to dole out the big bowls and the small bowls based on a goyrel, ulahatel goyrel aleim, afilu b'nei beisai u'b'choil. Even if you're dealing with your family, and even if it's during the week, even if it's not on Shabbos, aser mishum kovya. Take a look at this. So you're giving out, you're having a barbecue, and you have 4-ounce burgers and 8-ounce burgers, right? You have quarter pounders and half pounders, and you don't have enough of each one. So I'll throw a girl. Who's going to get the big burgers? Who's going to get the quarter pounders? Who's going to get the half pounders? Says the Mechaber Aser Mishum Kuvya. Now this is the day of Rishona. This is the first opinion in the Mechaber. We're going to see a more makel opinion in a moment. But according to this first opinion, the Mechaber says you're not allowed to do that. Even on a Monday night, you're not allowed to do that. By the Sunday night barbecue, you're not allowed to do that. Why? Mishum Kuvya. Because of Mesachik B'Kuvya. Because now you're drawing lots, you're making a raffle, you're making like a lottery, and there's going to be a winner and a loser. Once there's a winner and a loser, it's uncomfortably close to Mesachik B'Kuvya, and says the Mechaber that would be Aser. Says the Mishnah Berurah Chaf Beis, or lahatel girl, to have different sized portions and dole them out based on a lottery. Hainu, this means the Misha Yizka Bagirl, the winner of the lottery, Yita Lagdola, will take the big portion. Umisha Yischayev, and the loser of the girl, Yita Laktana, will get the small portion. You can't do that. Hu Beklal Schikas Kuvya Mamish. This is Schikas Kuvya. Kuvya, Humasha Mesachikid Be'etzim, little wooden dice. The Kuvya hu Avak Gezel Midivreim, and Mesachik Bekuvya is Avak Gezel. You have a winner, you have a loser, uncomfortably close to Mesachik B'Kuvya. You're not allowed to do this even on a Sunday night. Why? What's Avak Gezel? Like I explained, She'ein Daita L'Hakdoisa B'Kinyan Gomer, because the loser is not really giving over what he loses. He's not giving over the winnings to the winning party willingly, and therefore it's Avak Gezel. Ulahachi Yasser Af B'Choil. Now points out the Mishnah Berurah. Even though in our scenario, there's really no Avak Gezel of Mesachik B'Kuvya here, because winner, loser, what? You're giving out the quarter pounders and the half pounders. So you've got 3 kids, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. You've got 1 quarter pounder and 2 half pounders. You throw a girl. Reuven gets the half pounder. Shimon gets the next half pounder. Levi loses out. He gets the quarter pounder. So what? The Reuven and Levi didn't give over the quarter pounder. Levi didn't give over the half pounders willingly to Reuven and Shimon. The half pounders weren't Levi's. They belonged to the father. They belonged to Yaakov. Yaakov gave out everything willingly. So there's no Avak Gezel over here. Nevertheless, says the Chavetz Chaim, Aser, it's still Aser, because it is uncomfortably close to Mesachik B'Kuvya, and therefore we're worried, Dilma Asi Lisruche B'Kuvya im Acherim. If we're going to allow such things to take place, then people might go ahead and do Mesachik B'Kuvya between themselves, where there is a loser that's giving something over to a winner, and that would be an Issa D'Rabbanan of Mesachik B'Kuvya of Avak Gezel. And with other people, it's definitely Aser. Certainly on Shabbos, the Kuvya Dami L'Mekach U'Memkar, because this is also uncomfortably close to Mekach U'Memkar. It's like a business deal, right? You throw the lottery and then you get. It sounds like Mekach U'Memkar. So there's another reason for it to be Aser. You see over here, learning these halachas also, the severity with which we were treating the idea of gambling. Okay. The Yeshayimrim, going back to the Mechaber now, 3rd line down, last word on the line. So that was the day of Rishayna, which is very machmer. Now we have the second opinion. It's the Rambam and the Magid Mishnah. Rules like this Rambam. The Yeshayimrim, there are those that say, the Imbana v'bnei beisai mutar lahatel goyro, afilu almana gedola keneged mana ketana. The first opinion said that if you have different size portions, you're not even allowed to do this with B'nai Beisai, because if you have different size portions, you have this Pesachik B'Kuvya issue. Now we have this day Shnia that says that with B'nai Beisai, with family members, you're even allowed to do big portions and small portions. Why, says the Mechaber? Mimnei shein makpidim, because they're not makpid one with the other. Now, we have to analyze this carefully. The Mechaber told us originally that you're not allowed to do different size portions. Why? Because of misakek bekuvya. That's why. The other reason to aser would be they're makpid on each other and they might come to Mida Umishkal, which we didn't mention in the day of Rishonah when it came to B'nai Beisai. When it came to B'nai Beisai, we said you can't do different sized portions because of Misakeh Pekuvya. The day Shnia is saying that with B'nai Beisai, you're allowed to do different sized portions. Now, if we're going to be matir different sized portions, I'm saying this a little bit of a roundabout way, I just realized, but according to this day Shnia, according to this Rambam, that says that with B'nai Beisai, you're allowed to draw lots for different sized portions, we have to explain away two potential reasons to answer this. One is we have to understand why there's no issue of Mesachei Pekuvya. The second thing is we have to understand why there's no issue that if you're going to draw lots for different sized portions, maybe they're going to be makbid with each other and maybe they're going to come lidei midu mishkal. So let's see the Mishnah Berurah here. Says the Mishnah Berurah Kal Chav Gimel, the Mechaber just said that the rationale for the day of Shnia to be matir big portions and small portions by B'nai Beisai is shein makpidim. They're not makpid one on the other. Explains the Mishnah Berurah, Sharei hu noiseh lehem hakol mishaloi. First of all, v'loi shach shash de mido mishkal. First of all, the Mishnah Berurah says, what are you worried about? You're worried about mido mishkal? You're worried that they're going to come to start weighing and measuring? Says the Chavetz Chaim, I think I'm understanding this properly. The only time you have to worry that people are going to come to Mida and Mishkal is when they have a vested interest in what they're receiving. Not only because they want to feel like they got a bigger portion, but when they feel that it's coming to them, it belongs to them. When you're dealing with the father with the B'nai Beisai, they have no real claim to anything. The father is the one who owns everything, and the father is doling out. There's the old saying, what you get, you don't be upset. So we shouldn't be worried that there's going to be a hakpada. Yeah, maybe it'll be kvetcherai. How come you got a bigger portion than me? But that they're going to come to Mida Umishkal? What? They're coming to the father with a taina? He got 1.5 ounces more than me. I'm going to write that down. On Shabbos Parshas Veschanan, he got 1.5 ounces more than me. That's only when you have a claim. Over here, you have no claim. V'gam kuvya in kan. Also, there's no issue here of Mesachei Bekuvya. Why is no issue of Mesachei Bekuvya? Because there can't be Mesachei Bekuvya because of what we said earlier. There's no real Mesachei Bekuvya here. The kids are not giving up something of their own to one of the other children. Everything belongs to the father. He's giving out everything. There's no avak gezel over here because of winners and losers. But let's say it's Shabbos afternoon and the kids are sitting around together and they all have their own candy. And now they're drawing lots. They're throwing dice and betting who should get candy, who should lose candy. Aser mana gedola neged mana ketana. Definitely, if you're dealing with a mana gedola, mana ketana, that would definitely be aser because that is winners, losers. It looks like gambling. Finally, says the Ramah Hagah, v'asa lahatel garul b'Shabbos afilu al yedei einu Yehudi. The Ramah says any time that it's not mutter to do a girl in any of these situations where we're saying that the girl is aser, says the Ramah, you wouldn't be allowed to make this girl even al yedei einu Yehudi. You wouldn't be allowed to do it even through the agency of a non-Jew. Says the Mishnah Berurah. Lahatel girl is kal chav daled. Hainu imu lechalik eis davar. When is there a problem of making a girl? That's only when you're dividing up something physical. Va'aser afilu b'makom da'asi li'insuye. And to make a girl to divide up something physical, to make a girl to divide up the cholent, to make a girl to divide up the marble cake or the herring, that's aser, and it's aser even if you're trying to do it for, so to speak, a good reason, because you want to avoid fighting. It's still aser. But But to throw a girl, in some places they have a minig that even when people have yahrzeit, let's say 4 people have yahrzeit on the same day, there are some places where they have a minig where only one person can say Kaddish at a time. Why? Very simple. Because otherwise it turns into a balagan. 6 people are saying Kaddish at 6 different speeds, and everybody's saying an Amen Yisayma and an Amen Ketufa. Nobody's saying Amen at the right time. So in some places they're very makbid. I was in such a place where I was a chiyuv, 2 other people were chiyuvim, and the Gabi went around, and the Gabi said, okay, you say Kaddish after Aleinu. You say Kaddish after the Yom. You say Kaddish after Mizrah Shechanukas Habayis LeDavid in the beginning of davening. You say Kaddish to Rabbanon after Rabbi Yishmael Omer, because they don't want 2 people saying Kaddish at the same time. So what if you have to throw a girl? Who should be Zoicha to say Kaddish? What if you have to throw a girl? Who should get Shlishi? Says the Mishnah Berurah that over there, you're not dividing up anything physical. And since you're not dividing up anything physical, over there you can make a girl. And he brings a raya. The Hahayu Mefisa B'Shabbos B'Migdash Mishaychet Mizorek. The Kehanim made lotteries in the Beis Hamikdash to decide who should do different avodos by the Karbonos, by the Mizbeach. They threw lotteries. Literally, they drew lots. Who should be Zoichet to do what? And they did it even on Shabbos, because over there, they're not dividing up anything physical. Now, so what? Well, first of all, if you're not dividing up anything physical, there's no chash that you might come to Midah or Mishkal. There's nothing to measure, there's nothing to weigh. Also, there's no chash of Avak Gezel. You're not being kind to anything, you're not being makna anything. Nothing being physical is being acquired or given away. So you deal with both issues if there's nothing physical. V'ayin b'nezer Yisrael, that should be Nezer Yisrael, not Nezer HaKodesh. V'ayin b'nezer Yisrael, shehevi b'shem shvos Yaakov, chel gimel sil chavdalad, shamashbar, where it's implied, she'ena mutarak lahatal girl mitoich ha-sefer kanoig. He wants to say that even when you're allowed to throw a girl, you're not allowed to do the standard issue girl of throwing tickets into a jar and pulling out. The girl that you have to throw is a very, very old-fashioned type of girl that they used to do, which is they used to open up a sefer. So they would just open a sefer to a random page, right? So you open up the Mishnah Berurah, and the first word in the Mishnah Berurah on Kuf Tesam and Beis, the first word of the Shulchan Aruch is V'chein. So it starts with a Vav. So if there's somebody in the crowd, his name is Velvel, and Velvel starts with a Vav, Velvel is the winner. So that's how they used to throw a girl. So the Sefer Nezer Yisrael brings to the Shvus Yaakov that when we say it's mutter to throw a girl, it's only that type. It's that type, using a Sefer. Avalahatel girl ayudei piskois, but to use tickets, shenichtavu me'erev Shabbos shem kol echad alav, where everybody wrote their name on a ticket. Umatilin bekalpi, and then the shamish puts all the tickets into a jar, into a jug, and mixes it up and picks one out. Umaytzian piska, and he pulls out a ticket. Mishigalo l'sefer Torah, who should get shlishi? Aser, that's aser. Why? Because we're afraid of ksiva. We're afraid that you might come to write tickets on Shabbos. V'chein kosta b'sefer achaim. Ois kol hey, b'Shabbos the Ramah said you're not allowed to do these garolos on Shabbos. Ein b'magen Avram tafilu im hu dvar mitzvah. Even if you're doing this lottery taka for a dvar mitzvah, it's something that could not have been done on Erev Shabbos. Gam ken also b'Shabbos. Ubi yontav mashma mi magen Avram deshari ba'ifin zeh. From the Magen Avram, it's mashma that it would be mutter on Yom Tov, and that is an in-depth sugya that I'm not going to go into here. The ayin be'bir halacha, you could touch upon it in the bir halacha, which more accurately in the Sharit Tzion, ois katan chaf dalet. Okay, we're going to stop over here. We'll continue next time with Siman Shin Chav Gimel. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The schus of limud HaTorah should be megan against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbe Shem should send Yeshua Sefuras Parnas and Shaduchim to all those in need. We should be zoichet to see the BS Kal Tzedek. B'mher v'yameinu amen. Be well.